Hey everyone, John from Gaming in the Wild here with another indie game release schedule look-ahead video for you, this time for June of 2026. The gaming year has officially entered its silly season this month. We've had a state of play, Summer Game Fest is about to begin, Steam Next Fest is coming up in 2 weeks, and there seems to be a new showcase happening every single day at the moment. But amidst all of the madness, the indie game releases just keep on coming, so in this video I'm going to try and flag up some promising indie game titles for you because it's easier than ever to miss them with all of the stuff that's going on. And there are some really stellar games coming out this month, from a dreamlike subterranean exploration game to a gene-splicing creature creator and a fantasy RPG rhythm battler set in a simulation at the end of the world. But just before we get to June, let's cast a quick look back at May's indie games. To see what I played the most of, I hopped onto playtracker.net. It's a very useful website that draws together playtime and trophies from Steam, Xbox, PlayStation 5 and Switch. Playtracker are the sponsors of this video, and I actually do look at the website all the time. I can see on my Playtracker profile that my playtime was pretty divided in May. I spent 8 hours playing OPUS Prism Peak, and I'm still loving that game. It's a moody, emotional photography game that's like a cross between Season, A Letter to the Future and Studio Ghibli. I spent 6 hours playing Moon Sigil Atlas, an addictive deck builder with a moonlit cosmic vibe and a clever jigsaw mechanic to get your cards on the board. I spent only 2 hours playing 007 First Light. It's a very classy, high-budget AAA espionage blockbuster that mixes Hitman-style stealth with cinematic action sequences. But all of these games were beaten out in terms of playtime by Mina the Hollower, which was easily my most played game of May. I have 16 hours in Mina the Hollower already, even though it only came out on the 29th, so I only had a couple of days to get that time up. You can hang around at the end of the video for more thoughts on Mina, Opus, 007 and more in the Gaming in the Wild podcast, and if you would like to keep track of what you're playing across all platforms in one place, then sign up for your free Playtracker account today using the link that is on the screen now. If you sign up, you can also add me as your first Playtracker friend, link in the description for that, and a big thank you to Playtracker for sponsoring the last 6 months of indie game look-ahead videos. As always, your likes and comments are appreciated. You can sub to the channel for more like this, and I will tell you about the channel's Patreon in a while. And with that, let's get on with the video. At the very start of June, on the 1st of the month, we got Lost in Art, a miniature realm, which is a gorgeous top-down puzzle adventure with artwork that's based on Eastern manuscripts from the Persian and Ottoman empires. You will walk the streets of these miniature paintings, meeting characters from history and mythology, and solving puzzles of various types, be they visual, logic, rhyme, or text. I really like the atmosphere of this game and the fact that it uses traditional art styles from millennia past. That attention to detail goes as far as the music, which uses folk instruments from these regions and the myths and histories of these bygone eras. I think for people who like Pentiment, this could be an interesting one. It takes that same vibe and sets it in a different culture and a different place. It's a really fun project, and there's nothing else out there quite like it. There's a 20% launch discount on Steam if you're interested. That's Lost in Art, a miniature realm. Also on the 1st, we got Freefall 95, and dropper games were a Minecraft trend back in the 00s, where you jump into a seemingly endless hole and skydive to ground level. You have to avoid lasers and obstacles and collect bonuses on the way down, but Freefall 95 puts a different spin on that formula, turning it into a 2D side-on roguelike action game. This includes tricking on the way down to avoid airplane debris like flaming pieces of carapace and engines and so forth. You can grab pieces of the plane that have flown apart to push off them and go in another direction, and there are loads of objectives to do on the way down, like collecting a suitcase or grabbing 8 fizzy drinks and that kind of thing. And then when you inevitably splatter on the ground, you find yourself miraculously back in the plane, where you can talk to different passengers, power up for your next run, unlock skills and outfits. So it's kind of a mashup of 90s arcade vibes and early Flash games, and then modern roguelikes as well. Check it out on Steam now if that's your thing. That's Freefall 95. If dropper games were a trend of the past, then shepherding games are very much a trend of the present. Last year we got the lovely Herdling, where you shepherded giant furry creatures through a mysterious landscape, and we've already seen announcements for a couple more shepherding games, including The Free Shepherd, where you play as a sheepdog, and Summerhill, a forthcoming game where guiding your herd becomes a traversal puzzle. And we do actually get a brand new shepherding game this month. It's called Shepherd Knight, and it comes out on the 4th, and it has a different flavour to all of the games that I've mentioned already. It's made by a Brazilian studio, Cadabra, the creator creators of the 2023 creature collection game Adore, and it's a chill third-person action puzzle game in which you'll be collecting sheep, sometimes from precarious locations that you'll have to climb up to and find your way across to. You'll be keeping them safe from predators and pitfalls and getting them safely back to the pasture, which is in this case some kind of warp statue. There is a story element here as well about how humble sheep are actually the guardians of the natural world's balance. Just imagine if that turned out to be true, the lamb farming industry would have a lot to answer for right now. I think this game looks really fun. It's a little bit like what if a 3D Zelda was all about sheep farming instead of saving the world from Ganondorf. That is Shepherd Knight, coming to Steam on the 4th of the month. Also on the 4th, we get a mellow puzzle game set inside of a music box called Swan Song. In this game, you have to guide a small swan through your music box, and to do so, you have to drop notes onto its mechanism. The notes will change the layout of the box and allow the swan to move forward. These puzzles start out simple, but they come to involve a lot of lateral thinking as you program different sequences of notes into the music box, trying to create the right sequence of notes and the right tune that will let the swan pass through the box. The game promises over 100 unique puzzles to solve, and each one will progress the story of the music box as well, answering questions like who made it and why it was considered the creator's masterpiece and their swan song. So you don't just get the puzzles, but you get a story as well. There's a demo on Steam now if you'd like to try it out, and the full game unlocks on the 4th of the month. That's Swan Song. We're getting 2 interesting games on the 8th of the month, and the first of them is called Cursemark. It is interestingly the first combat-focused game on this list. And as a quick aside, can I just say that as much as I love hitting things in games, combat is fun of course. Sometimes I watch showcases like the State of Play, and I come away thinking that video games are basically a medium that is about battering and dismembering stuff. And I just want to say that I personally am very interested in other kinds of games too, so I do make a concerted effort to try and spotlight a diverse range of games in my videos, because video games can do all kinds of things, you know, and that's part of their magic. But magic is a part of Cursemark as well. It's a top-down hack-and-slash swords and sorcery action-adventure that promises dramatic action, builds and upgrades, and a satisfying roguelike formula. It looks like there is plenty that carries over from run to run to keep that sense of progression. It's not a full release, it will be going into early access, so if you're the kind of person who enjoys feeding back to developers and helping them get the game where it needs to be, then you can do that from the 8th of June. And there is a demo on Steam now if you want to dip a toe in the water. That's Cursemark. The 8th also sees the release of a co-op building game called Solarpunk. Now, I raised an eyebrow at a cozy sci-fi building game having punk in the title, because I always associate punk with grimy, edgy, anti-establishment, anarchistic kind of vibes, but it turns out that Solarpunk is actually the name of a genre of sci-fi. It's a utopian spin on cyberpunk that reimagines a future where technology comes to serve nature and humanity rather than wrecking it and enslaving it. That might seem more like high fantasy than sci-fi in the world that we live in right now, but I applaud any futuristic media that presents anything other than darkness and doom, to be honest. I think we need other kinds of ideas looking into our future as well, and Solarpunk gives players the opportunity to harness technology to create a settlement that's both idyllic and futuristic. Imagine building a wood cabin that also has automated, sustainable, solar-powered farming, resource collection and manufacturing pipelines as well, and then when one Sky Island settlement is complete, you can use drones to explore and scout out different Sky Islands, and then an airship to travel to your next one. I think it's a pretty interesting proposition. It's out on the 8th on Steam and all the consoles, although bear in mind that the launch edition doesn't have crossplay if you're planning to play with friends. That's Solarpunk. Last game before the intermission, and on the 9th we get Voidling Bound, an interesting mix of third-person action and creature collecting. In this game you play as a space wrangler who collects voidlings. These are space creatures with individual abilities and personalities, and you can take control of them and use them in battle. Each voidling is vastly customizable with attributes to level up, and you can also evolve them and change their elemental affinities and things like that. You can also find new voidling eggs when you're out in the wild and return them to your vivarium. Once you've hatched some new voidlings, there is a gene collecting mechanic that allows you to combine different voidling DNA and make new creatures with abilities that you've kind of crafted yourself. And as well as all of that management stuff, it is an action game too. You can psychically control these creatures and take them out into enemy infested areas. So I'll be very interested to see how the gameplay holds up, because it's a really interesting concept. It's Steam only for now, with console versions on the horizon. That's Voidling Bound, coming out on the 9th. That brings us to the halfway point of this video. We're 7 indie games in, with 7 more to go, and if you're still watching now, maybe you're the kind of indie game fan who values this channel and the content that I make for you all. If you do, there's plenty more where this came from. You can check out the channel's Patreon for bonus content and extras. For $1 a month, you get access to the channel's tranquil Discord community, where people swap tips on new indie games every single day. For $3 a month, you can get a bonus suite of podcasts about off-topic things like good books, new films, music, and travel to places like Tokyo and Dublin and all the places that I go. $5 will get you a hand-picked indie game code for a game that I think you will love, like Signs of the Sojourner, Phantom Spark, and other underrated indie titles. And $10 gets you a shout-out on every video and podcast that I make, so special thanks to my boss tier patrons, King Champ, Susanna Maria, Drellish, Reistic Studies, Nate, Noah, and Jeremy. You can join them at patreon.com/gaminginthewild, link on the screen now for that. We will be running a Next Fest event coming very soon, where everyone in the community can share the Next Fest games they're playing. We all upvote and downvote them, and then people can see what the most popular games are, and it will result in a chart at the end of Next Fest. It's a really fun way to take part in Next Fest, and a really good way to help the cream rise to the top if you're a Next Fest kind of person. There are all kind of other interesting community events as well, so come and join the club, man. But that's enough about the community and the Patreon. Let's get on with the video and talk about some more games. This next one's pretty interesting. On the 11th, we'll get the newest release from Shiro Games, which will enter early access. It's called StarCraft, and it's an ambitious-seeming game that draws a lot of comparisons to No Man's Sky, reasons that you're probably looking at on the screen right now. The debt that it owns to No Man's Sky is very visible, from the jet trails behind the spaceship's wingtips to the colour of the crystals that you're collecting with the colour of the mining laser that you're using to the style of the architecture and decor. It even has that iconic seamless planet-to-space travel, but if it's just a No Man's Sky clone, why am I mentioning it here? The answer is that despite all I've said here, it does have a bit of a different gameplay vision to No Man's Sky. SpaceCraft is a play on words because there is a lot of crafting involved here, and it does all revolve around building your spaceship from scratch, slowly upgrading it over time, and to do so you'll need to engage with the granular automation element of the game as well. That part of the game looks more like something like Satisfactory than No Man's Sky, so while I have one eyebrow firmly raised at just how much it's using the No Man's Sky aesthetic to try and openly court that game's fans, I am interested to see if it can assert a personality of its own, because it's certainly an ambitious title. We'll find out on June the 11th. That's SpaceCraft. And maybe the most chaotic looking game on this month's list is Goblin America, a game that feels firmly in the lineage of intentionally garish FPS games. I feel like Cruelty Squad and the recent Don't Stop Girly Pop really coined this genre, and the devs describe it as a squirmy, bouncing shooter filled with lovely sights and horrible places. And this game really does have a strong visual identity all of its own, maybe a little bit like an asset store mashup in the style of video game auto developer Cosmo D, but with something a bit more grimy and rough about it as well. It's a time-traveling action game in which your mission is to possess every president of America, to make different choices, to fix history and, quote, make life beautiful forever, unquote. Gameplay-wise, you're basically parkouring through complex levels at high speed, neon white style, while blasting enemies, collecting pickups, and trying not to die. I think a lot of the appeal of this game will rest in how it feels to play, and there is a demo on Steam now if you'd like to find out. That's Goblin America, coming out on Steam on June 17th. The next game is a bit more my speed, and that's why it's one of my most hype picks of the month. It is Maseylia, Echoes of the Past. The first thing that we notice about this game is that it has a lovely eye-catching visual style reminiscent of Sable's Mobius-inspired line art. But looking under the hood a little bit, it's a game that's a 3D Metroidvania that was directly inspired by the original Metroid Prime, Hollow Knight, and the cult hit Pseudo Regalia. And I have to say, when I checked the Steam page for this game, having seen a screenshot or two, it's getting to the point where I kind of breathe a sigh of relief when it's not a roguelike. We really have hit saturation point with roguelikes, I think. It's nice to play something else, and it's nice to see interesting games coming out from the indie sphere that aren't roguelikes. And I really like what the Soul Brothers have to say about this game on the Steam page. They say that the priorities are freedom of movement, deep exploration, and atmospheric discovery, and that, quote, new powers don't just unlock doors, they reshape how you move, how you interact with the world, and how they allow you to revisit old areas in entirely new ways, unquote. All of which is music to my ears, honestly. I really love exploration games, especially in environments like this. They look absolutely gorgeous. I really like the game's vibrant color palette and varied biomes. I have actually played the demo of this one a little, and I think people should be aware that this is a small team indie game with some quaint rough edges, like tutorials having slightly wordy prompts that talk about both mouse and keys and controller buttons, rather than contextually, knowing what you're using to play the game. But if you are down for that, if you're down for some rough edges, this is a really cool indie game. It's very promising. Steam only now, with console ports planned for the future. That's Maseylia Echoes of the Past, out on June 19th. On the 22nd, we're getting a Devolver joint called Dark Scrolls. It's a retro 2D platformer from the creators of the excellent Gunbrella. I played a little bit of this one at the London Games Festival. It was on the show floor in a very cute booth with like a kind of retro SNES setup and old gamepads. And I have to say that whilst I loved Gunbrella, which had a retro look but a contemporary feel to the gameplay, Dark Scrolls is actually pure retro. Like a little bit too much for me at least. It feels like something that could have been on UFO 50. It has clunky NES style movement, screen scroll that continues regardless of your own movement speed as the character, and a style of processing inputs that made me wish it felt a little bit more modern and up to date, a little bit more free and a little bit less clunky and old. But I know from the comments that many of the viewers of this channel do like more pure retro games. So even if Dark Scrolls isn't one for me, I thought I'd put it on your radar at least. That's Dark Scrolls, out on the 22nd. On the 25th, we get The Life You Missed, a very heartfelt walking sim game from a solo developer called Nastya. They have a very heartfelt entry on their Steam page that recounts how they made the game and why they made it. They made it because they had a realization that they as a person were sleepwalking through life without fully experiencing it, without being fully present and without making truly meaningful choices. They were very engaged in work, success, and the red tape of life, and they were on autopilot a little bit, which is pretty deep stuff to think about, and this game is a meditation on that experience. We play as a protagonist who arrives at an old house in the woods to renovate it, but the remnants of the past owner's life are still there. So it's all about putting the pieces of the story puzzle together. We explore the house, we explore the surrounding woods and the lake, and find parallels between their life and ours. So it's a slow, meditative kind of game with a strong narrative focus. I think it's probably one for people who liked games like the seminal Dear Esther or Gone Home, or just for fans of melancholic existential pondering, which is, I guess, an official hobby of mine at this point. That's The Life You Missed, coming to Steam on the 25th. And then finally on the 30th, we get my second most hype pick. That is Nocturne, a very interesting looking fantasy RPG with lovely pixel art. The twist here is that it replaces traditional RPG combat with rhythm gameplay. So it's a game that has a cozy RPG feel to it, but a bit of a twist to make it feel fresh and new and interesting as well. I really like the look of its overgrown world, and interestingly, it's apparently a game in which the setting is a simulation at the end of the world with themes of immortality and the sacrifices that come with it. So there might be more here than meets the eye. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up leaving the Matrix in this game and finding ourselves in some far future facility, which could make for some interesting story and gameplay twists, I think. It's PC only now for this one, but it looks like it's going to be deck verified. There's a demo out now if you want to see if it's your thing. It's certainly mine, and that's why it's my second most hype pick of the month. That's Nocturne. And just before we get to the Gaming in the Wild podcast episode, which I hope that you will enjoy, it's my, contemporaneous thoughts about games that I'm playing, like Mina the Hollower, 007, OPUS, Prism, Peak. I do sometimes get comments from people who are wondering what I liked the most, how many games that I played from these preview videos. So I think I'm going to try and get into the habit of having an extended podcast section at the end of them so you can hear me talking about the games that I picked out and how they turned out to be. But just to round out with the AA and AAA releases, on the 2nd we get Fate Keeper. It's a dark first-person fantasy RPG with brutal combat and a pretty impressive looking world to get lost in. On the 3rd, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes to the Switch too. It's the second chapter of the sprawling remake series. This was a very well-lauded game, but I thought it was in pretty rough shape when I played it upon release on the base PS5. The frame rate was rough, it made me feel kind of nauseous actually, but it gets a Metacritic 92, so maybe it's been better optimized for the Switch too. On the 9th, NBA The Run comes out. It's a street basketball game with 3-on-3 action that promises fast, fluid, natural basketball. On the 11th, it's time for Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader fans to get excited because the Infinite Museon DLC is coming out. I keep meaning to play Rogue Trader, it has nothing but love from RPG fans. On the 18th, it's time for The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales, the latest HD 2D style RPG from Square Enix. Maybe one for the Octopath fans out there. On the 18th, we get R-Type Tactics 1 and 2 Cosmos, which is a new take on the classic sci-fi shooter mode, which I remember playing when I came home from school. And then on the 25th, it is the AAA release of the month. It is the Star Fox remake from Nintendo on the Switch 2. It's yet another reboot of the classic Star Fox game, which was called Starwing over in Europe. I remember this game blowing my mind at the time. It was one of those SNES cartridges that had a chip on board so that it could handle early 3D graphics. The new Star Fox crew models have been controversial, but I really like them actually. They look like the puppets from the original box art, so I for one will definitely be there for Star Fox. And with that, I'm going to leave you with the podcast episode where I talk about the games that I played last month. If you're still here, like the video, comment, subscribe. Thanks for being here and enjoy the podcast. So first up today is Mina the Hollower. This is the long-anticipated top-down pixel art adventure. It has a little bit of Castlevania about it, a little bit of Bloodborne about it, a lot of 2D Zelda about it. It has quite a chunky, crunchy, retro pixel art style. It was successfully kickstarted and got a lot of attention at the time. It seems like pixel art and retro-style games that have a really strong visual appeal and a nostalgic appeal kind of do well on Kickstarter. And Mina did too. I think it raised like, $1 million or something like that. It took an awful long time to develop. It has been through, I wouldn't want to say development hell, but it's been through a protracted development period. It's like not on the same scale as like a Silk Song, but I make these indie game annual look ahead videos towards the games that are coming out in any given year. And Mina the Hollower has been in the White Whales section for the last couple of years. But we finally did get a release date. It was supposed to come out on Halloween last year. It was bumped for polishing and balancing to May, and it came out on May 29th, today, as I'm recording this. I tried the demo of Mina the Hollower at Next Fest, I think 2 Next Fests ago, and I wasn't immediately smitten by it. I found it to be more difficult than I was imagining it might be. If you're into 2D Zelda of the past, like Link to the Past and those classic top-down Zelda games, the Game Boy games, the Link's Awakening through to A Link Between Worlds and that kind of thing, in my memory, they are not that difficult. I mean, we were talking about it in Discord today, and friend of the show, Dave Jackson, said that he played Link to the Past recently and it kind of drove him crazy and that he did find it difficult. It's been a long time since I played it. I've dabbled occasionally in Nintendo Switch Online, but I do remember playing it as a teenager. I do remember finishing it. I don't remember being particularly angry with it, although I think maybe the last boss took a little while. I do remember that my mum played A Link to the Past back when we had a Super Nintendo in the living room, and she used to pass the controller to me for bosses, and I would take the bosses for her. And then she would do the exploration and the pulling up plants and chopping bushes and talking to people stuff. But Mina the Hollower is definitely cut from a different cloth to those old nostalgic Zelda games. It has some visible Dark Souls influences. Specifically, it has corpse runs, where if you die, you lose all of your currency until you get back and kill the enemy that killed you. But I would say, in addition to that, it has a feeling of the spirit of post-FromSoft games. I would say games like Tunic that perhaps are Zelda-ish types of games that have definitely got some Dark Souls DNA in them. Like these are games that came out after Dark Souls, came out after Elden Ring, came out after the rise of FromSoft, and you can feel it in their spirit. I think Mina the Hollower is definitely in that lineage. Dave was also saying that he thinks that it's more Castlevania-inspired than Dark Souls. I think that that's true too. So if you mix up in a big cauldron a bit of Dark Souls, a bit of Castlevania, a bit of Link to the Past, then you're going to get Mina the Hollower. And I think that for certain people, that particular cocktail is an absolute bullseye in terms of their gaming interests. People love Game Boy nostalgia, or Game Boy Advance, or Game Boy Color, or whatever, this one happens to be specifically. They love a bit of Dark Souls, they love a bit of challenge, they love a perfectly formed and polished game. I think that for people that like that kind of stuff, Mina's going to be a direct hit. For me, the first 2 hours, 3 hours that I've played so far, I've had spurts where I'm really enjoying it. I really like this mechanic where if you jump and then hold jump, you will burrow under the ground and you can go under fences, you can find secrets. Some of the most fun stuff that I've done so far in the game has been seeing like a barely visible little slot in a wall and then burrowing, or rather hollowing, under it and then finding secrets, finding caves, finding treasures. The game also has an interesting trinket system where you can get trinkets that will give you buffs and boons and that kind of thing. It has multiple weapons that you can pick up or buy as well. It has multiple currencies. It has save points where you can power yourself up, level up your attack, defense, your potions, and that kind of thing. It has an interesting healing system, and it has, like Dark Souls, it does have corpse runs, but it has a different system where you can get sparks, which give you multiple attempts to get your currency back. So you get multiple corpse run attempts, basically, which is, a nice way to try and ameliorate some of the frustrations of the FromSoft formula. I also quite like the platforming. I like that you can jump around. I like that there are very active elements to it. There's like a dash that you can use. Hollowing turns out to be a very interesting mechanic in that you can use it for traversal, you can use it for combat, you can use it for puzzles. And so it's very woven into all of the different systems of the game. And there is a feeling of something that has been worked on with care and polished to a fine sheen over time. There is a feeling of quality in Mina the Hollower that I really enjoy. I feel like I'm kind of in safe hands in a sense. And you can probably sense that there is a but coming. And there definitely is, because also, as well as admiring the game and having fun with it, there have been times, even in the first couple of hours, where it's driven me crazy to a small degree. It is possible in the Dark Souls style to come up against enemies that you are basically far outmatched by, which means that you just get wiped, basically. So you can be kind of trundling along, doing quite well, having a good time, doing traversal stuff, taking out basic field enemies, and then you might come up against someone who just kills you in a couple hits, who is way too fast, way too armored, and you're just not equipped to fight and just get wiped, basically, and then have to deal with that. It was a feeling a little bit like when I was first playing Kena Bridge of Spirits, if you remember that game. It's like a jolly, Pixar-looking, cute adventure, but then the first mid-boss that you face in Kena has 5 different attacks, and they are fast and brutal. You have to parry, you have to dodge, or you're dead. It was like a Lies of P style boss encounter. And I think it woke a lot of people up because the aesthetic of the game is such that you think you're just going to have a nice, cute Pixar time. It turns out you're having a FromSoft challenging time, and it wakes you up to that. I think Mina the Hollower definitely has that. It's a pixel art style game, and I think a lot of people that have been looking forward to it have been expecting a modern 2D Zelda with all of the accoutrements of modern games, like updated, freshened up, put into a different scenario, lots of new abilities and so forth. And what they're actually going to get is a game that is not afraid to slap them down, is a game that is not afraid to wipe them, is a game that is not afraid to present friction, and that has a post-FromSoft attitude towards difficulty and challenge. So I'm quite interested to see how this all plays out. We've had the Silk Song debate last year, which was a very, very fraught, widescreen debate in the gaming community about difficulty. And Mixtape came out earlier this year and had discourse around it being way too easy and not interactive enough. And there are sides to this fight. And I get the feeling that Mina the Hollower might turn out to be another discourse game. But it just came out today. So it's just my prediction. Let's see over the next week if Mina the Hollower turns out to be a game that people are going nuts about on the internet and fighting about. But yeah, the moments that put me off a little bit were encountering field enemies that just charge you down and kill you very quickly. Encountering some, even at this early juncture of the game, when it's still kind of welcoming you in, you can see what it's going to be like. There is a sense of mischief in the design. For example, if you have to hollow and then pop out of the earth, which gives you an extra long jump to get onto a moving platform. But then, as well as doing that, there are flying enemies that will swoop down and hit you, knocking you off that platform and sending you back to the entrance to the area. And then there are also turrets that are shooting bullets at you based on your last position. So not only are you hollowing, popping out, jumping on a moving platform, jumping between moving platforms, but there are 2 different enemies trying to knock you off as you are doing that. To me, this is instantly irritating. Just give it a rest. The jumping would have been fine, honestly, for this 2-hour period into the game. But they've layered on a bit too much, and layering on a bit too much is what killed Silk Song for me, ultimately. So I've got a sense that I'm getting a taste of the kind of mischievous layered difficulty that is going to be prevalent throughout the game. And so ultimately I'm a little skeptical that I'm in Mina the Hollower for the long haul. But I have a code and playing it on my Switch 2. If you're thinking of playing it, I have to say, Switch 2 is a wonderful place to play it. That nice big screen. Something about playing pixel art games on a Nintendo handheld is a vibe. It feels right. It harks back to playing Link's Awakening on a Game Boy SP. And Mina definitely fits that old Nintendo style. It has a nostalgia to it. It's been a cozy time. I'm going to keep going, There are a lot of difficulty modifiers in this game as well. I can kind of hear people screaming that on the other side of this podcast. I am aware that there are lots and lots of difficulty modifiers that are generous. For example, you can take down incoming damage by 25, 50, or 75%. You can up the outgoing damage that you're doing. You can make yourself invulnerable, God mode, which is always... It leads to a very unsatisfying game experience, in my opinion, but it's there for people who want it. Probably good as an accessibility option, if not a balance tweaking option. And there are lots of other things that you can do in there too. I toggled on one that means that every time you hit an enemy, you heal by a small amount, which meant that it kind of turned each combat encounter into something that you might come out of with a lot of health, rather than something that you might limp out of, like about to die next time anything hits you. So that made for a smoother ride, even in the early hours that I've been playing. But I think there are limits to what that kind of difficulty toggle can do. And it can be tricky to try and find, when it's granular, it's good. Like, it does give you more options to mess with to try and find the Goldilocks zone. I've been toggling on and off here and there, and I've had it way too easy, way too hard, and found that the things that the toggles don't affect, like tricky platforming where you get knocked down a hole, aren't toggleable. So I don't know. There are lots of toggles there. Maybe it will turn out that there is like a Goldilocks zone that can be found that makes it feel nice. I kind of wish that there was like an easy, medium, and hard as well, just to take a little bit of the labor out of like trying to find from these 30 plus toggles what there is to make it feel right to you. But shout out to the developers for putting all of that stuff in there. I'm sure it will be a big help to a lot of people. I do wonder if ultimately the difficulty-based core design of the game, even with toggles, will lead to a tension in the gameplay experience that isn't exactly my bag, but I'm trying to stay fresh, trying to stay open. So that's Mina the Hollower for now. Next up is 007 First Light. It is from the developers of Hitman. I can't remember the name right now. In case you can't tell, I'm actually doing this show off the cuff and without notes. I just felt like sort of sitting down, talking about games. It's the way I actually started the podcast, was with minimal notes. And over the years, I have managed to turn doing this podcast into a task that takes a lot more time than it used to do. It used to be a little more contemporaneous, spontaneous. And now I have nested bullet lists that can be thousands of words long. Today I'm just winging it. I think because I've only played a couple of hours of these games, I don't have fully developed thoughts on them as yet. I just have first impressions, and that is true of 007 First Light as well. As I was saying at the start of the podcast, it's not a game that I was madly looking forward to, but when I saw those reviews come in hot, I think it's on 87 Metacritic right now, I thought, okay, they've pulled something off here. I have played Hitman in the past, Hitman 4 I think it was. Didn't quite gel with the immersive sim elements of it. Found myself a little lost within the freedom and complexity. Never quite managed to acclimatize myself to what Hitman was trying to do, but did admire it from afar and have heard people that like the game talk about it very eloquently, very articulately. And I thought that 007 might just be a slightly more action-focused, slightly more approachable version of Hitman. They're working with a big license. They're going for a mass audience. And from all the trailers, we can see that Bond's going to be doing his fair bit of machine gunning. It looks like it has an Uncharted influence. As someone who hasn't played much of any Uncharted games, I am still aware of what their influence is, of the climbing, the cinematic set pieces, of the all-action third-person vibe of the Uncharted games. So I thought maybe if it's mixing together a little bit of third-person action, a little bit of stealth and espionage, then it could be fun for someone like me who doesn't love the Hitman formula, but is intrigued by it. And I've played a couple of hours of it. It starts off in Iceland with Bond as a young airman who is in a mission that's gone wrong, basically, and finds himself pulling off an extremely high-risk rescue that you play through. He then gets summoned to MI5 and recruited. So it's like a retelling of Bond, basically. That Iceland mission gave me pause. There's loads of stealth in there. I found myself getting knocked out a couple of times. I'm famously bad at stealth in games. Something about predicting what this AI will do, what it will sense, what it will hear, and what it will see doesn't sit easily in my brain. Like, the language of video game stealth has always seemed somewhat elusive to me. The game also had QTEs, which are another pet hate of mine. So I thought at the start, oh no, I'm not going to dig this game. Stealth and QTEs, a match made in hell for my particular taste. But the game picked up quite rapidly. I will say that it has possibly the best, most interesting tutorial that I've encountered in any game. I kind of don't want to spoil it for people. Like, if you don't want to have very, very light spoilers on the tutorial for the Bond games, then flip ahead 30 seconds, basically. But the way that this game handles the tutorial is that Bond is enrolled in the OO program and has to get himself up to speed very quickly in order to become a OO agent. And the way the tutorial plays out is as a cinematic training sequence. So, you know, in a movie, when someone gets enrolled and they have to learn how to punch, block, shoot, jump, drive, and you see them through rapid cuts, you see them failing and then getting a lot better over time. The Bond game actually uses this as tutorial. So every time it cuts, you are learning to do something that Bond is learning on screen. Very, very cool, very, very clever, diegetic way to do a tutorial. And for the people who skipped over the last 30 seconds, welcome back. You are safe. The tutorial spoilers are over. So I'm very early in the game, but I will say that the melee action feels really nice. There is obviously some Hitman stuff in here, like you can use your special James Bond watch to turn on computers, turn on fans, interfere with electrical devices. And it seems pretty clear that even in the first missions, there's going to be a mixture of stealth, planning, and action. I quite like the shooting. I quite like the feel of the driving. I quite like the feel of the shooting and the melee combat. There are holds that you can do. You can dodge other people trying to hold you. Once you've got them in your grasp, you can knee them and throw them and that kind of thing. It felt pretty good. So I'm looking forward to actually getting Bond out onto a mission. The piece that I have played is where I'm about to start that big first mission. I hear that it's in a hotel, and I'm actually looking forward to it at this point. So 007 has made a surprisingly good first impression on me. I am still guarding myself, because if it turns out to be very, very stealth heavy, then obviously I might have a few problems. But yeah, very fun game so far. And I will say that it looks amazing too. I'm playing on Xbox Series X, and it looks very, very, very smooth to my eye. The lighting is very nice. The textures are very nice. It has an interesting thing where, as Bond is being enrolled in a 00 program, which is being rebooted by the new M, there are other people in the program too. So you have a very interesting selection of colleagues that you're getting to know as well. So it's not just Bond, the lone wolf. It's Bond as part of a team who are all learning together and earning the number together. And that is the tagline for the game, is earn the number. So it's very much like a Bond becoming Bond kind of story. Yeah, looking forward to seeing where it goes. That is 007 First Light. And then, yeah, the other two things that I'm playing right now are Opus Prism Peak. Something that I really like about Opus Prism Peak is that in case you don't know what it is, it's a walking sim type game with some photography elements to it, a anime style, slightly dreamy visual look to everything, and a strong Studio Ghibli affect to everything, I would say, in its magical realism. There have been moments that seemed quoted from Ghibli to me, like a train ride that had a little bit of Spirited Away to it, like animal gods, like being through the looking glass in a magical place. It also has a strong sense of melancholy, which I think is something that runs through Studio Ghibli as well, from Spirited Away to Princess Mononoke and, The Boy and the Heron. There's a sadness and a soulfulness to Studio Ghibli that I think makes it transcend what people might think they are at first glance. And Opus Prism Peak has that woven into it. As I said last episode, the translation feels a bit off. I'm still struggling a little bit with understanding the gestures and the mumbles and the side eyes in that JRPG style, where you're like, what just happened when people are having an interaction? But I am really enjoying actually the photography stuff. So the way that the game works is that you are introduced into a small explorable area. You can go and photograph stuff around that area. Each time you do, it becomes an entry in your notebook, and then the photographs become clues that you have to use to solve riddles. And then when you solve the riddles, you will get story progression, you will get new photography equipment, you will get to advance to the next area. There are lots of missable photographs, so you have to attune yourself to noticing and looking. And I think that's been a really interesting part of the game for me, is that it asks you to slow down and look at your surroundings, which I think is generally good advice in the internet age. And it asks you to look and see, as part of being a photographer. There is some philosophy of being a photographer woven in here, because your main character is like a sad, middle-aged photographer who is having this slightly dreamy, spiritual, out-of-body experience, the nature of which is unclear. And so having him slow down, notice the world around him, reconnect with photography, which was taught to him by his grandfather, reconnecting to his own past, trying to find his joy, and helping other people out along the way as well. It's got its hooks into me for sure. I think there is something soulful, something slow, something lovely about the game. And, as I'm playing things like Mina the Hollower, which are mischievously pushing back, trying to make me skill up, it's really nice to dip into OPUS Prism Peak, which is rather making a space for me to move into and offering interesting thoughts and insights that I can then take away with me and mull over. So it's been really interesting holding these games in each hand, and thinking about, what I like about games, really. And finally, another thing that's been really interesting in the last couple of weeks of play has been Folly. If you don't know Folly, it's a forthcoming roguelike deck builder. It is a post-Balatro game for sure. We've had tons of post-Balatro games, and I try and play them all, like Gambonanza, like Cursed Words, like Passant, the chess versions, the Scrabble versions. And nothing has really recaptured that Balatro magic for me until Folly came along. I played 14 hours of the demo across a single weekend. I was playing it late into the night. I was just really glued to it. It's a deck builder where you put together a medieval entertainment troupe, like a Renaissance fair troupe, where you'll start off with just like a singer, a thief, a pickpocket, and you have to build your deck to include magicians, jugglers, fire breathers, knights, samurai, all of whom will entertain the people. It has a very interesting blackjack mechanic where cards that can be powerful and win you a lot of applause, but can also raise the outrage level. And if you get too much outrage, you bust your hand. So it's got a risk-reward mechanic, a strong deck-building mechanic where you're constantly tuning and honing your deck. It has many, many, many banners that will change your style. They're a little bit like the Jokers in Balatro. It has these writs that will change your playstyle as well. It has many, many, many decks that give you different cards, over 150 cards, all of them beautifully animated. So it's systems heavy, it's addictive, it's easy to get into, it's hard to master. It has a lot of depth. And I ended up talking to the developer and actually coming on board to help promote the game. So first I fell in love with it, so I feel like I can talk about it as an enthusiast. But secondly, I'm actually doing a little bit of work on this game now, talking with the developer, giving feedback, spotting bugs, watching as Charlie, the developer, changes things, especially when it comes to balance, like raising and lowering the amount of applause you need to get through a session, changing the powers of different cards so that they are more or less effective, and watching that balancing happening in real time and seeing just how impactful it can be. Like if I've played like 10 runs in a row, and then find out the difficulty went up and I didn't get anywhere, then I will report that back. I will see what happens when the difficulty is tuned. And so it's been a really, really insightful and wonderful process. I've also been talking to lots of podcaster friends, YouTuber friends, journalist friends, putting the game in their hand, trying to get it on their radar. The game will be in Next Fest. The demo is live now. And it's been very, very insightful, informative, enjoyable, and a lot of fun to be a part of a game's journey to the light, basically, towards release. It's coming out in Q3. It's going to be in Next Fest, and I'm talking to a lot of people right now. If you happen to be a content creator who is covering Next Fest or is interested in covering this game, then reach out to me. It's john@gaminginthewild.com. I have some demo codes. And yeah, Fame or Folly. It's a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun playing it. I'm still playing it a lot. It's become my podcast game when I'm listening to, Tales from the Backlog or the Pre-Order Bonus or Pages of Play, all of the podcasts that I listen to, the short game, No Clip, or watching Kyle Bossman streaming or watching Blinkoom streaming. Then Fame or Folly is great. You just turn the volume down and you can play it whilst watching. So it's become my perfect game for that kind of scenario. And yeah, I'm working on getting the word out. So content creator friends, please help out. Check out Fame or Folly. I have high hopes for it becoming the next Balatro. I think if enough people play it, it really does have potential to become a game that a lot of people love. I think it has that perfect mix of easy to pick up, hard to master, and a lot of depth so that you always feel like you're learning about new card synergies. I think this could be a really big deal, man. So yeah, very exciting. Check it out. Looking forward to Next Fest. That is Fame or Folly. And that's it. That's our grab bag episode for this week. We had Mina the Hollower, we had 007 First Light, we had OPUS Prism Peak, and then we had Fame or Folly, which you might hear me talking about again. If you find it interesting hearing about my experience actually being part of a game coming towards release, then let me know, man. I'm happy to share that journey. OPUS Prism Peak, I think I'm definitely going to finish. I'm just having such a lovely time with it. It's such a quiet, episodic game. I've been playing an episode a night, and each one takes about half an hour or so. So it's a really nice game to play in little chunks to wind down with as well. 007 First Light, I'm looking forward to. That's a big TV game for me. That's a spectacle game, so that's my current TV game. And then Mina the Hollower is a cozy Switch 2 game as well. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Feel free to hop on the Patreon if you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/gaminginthewild. And with that, take care of yourselves and each other, and bye-bye for now.